Good afternoon, everybody. Let's start our meeting. It is 1:47 and I'd like to call the Permit Review Committee meeting to order. And we'll begin with the roll call. Commissioner Fair. Commissioner Ponce. Commissioner Hughes. Great, and I am here and we have a quorum. And I'd like to request a motion to approve the minutes from our March 7th, 2024 meeting. Do we have a motion? Commissioner Hughes made a motion. Do we have a second? Commissioner Fair seconded, and Commissioner Ponce. Yes, Commissioner Ponce is a yes, and I'm a yes, and the minutes have been approved and passed unanimously, and we posted to the website. Sorry, guys. There are two projects on the agenda for today's meeting. Staff to the commission will present the project on the agenda and state their recommendation. Following the staff presentation, the committee will have an opportunity to ask questions of the staff. The applicants may then make a statement. Following the applicant's statements, members of the public may make their statements. I'd like to ask anyone other than the applicant wishing to make a statement on the item on today's agenda to complete a public comment card and give the card to a member of the staff. Comment cards are available at the door. As a courtesy to other individuals wishing to offer comments, we ask the members of the general public to limit your statement to 3 minutes or less. When the time comes for public comment on the item on the agenda, I will call the names on the cards and ask you to make your statement. Please state your name, interest, organization, and company you represent, if any. Our first item is 5700 South John Baptist Point, DuSable Lakeshore Drive, in the Fifth Ward, Alderman Yancey, in the Museum of Science and Industry, and it is the proposed replacement of existing exterior signage at West Underground Garage entry with new 5'10" by 28-foot precast concrete panel due to a change of name. Emily Barton has a presentation.
Yes, thank you. So the Museum of Science and Industry is the last surviving building from the 1893 World Columbian Exposition and was reconstructed in 1933. Significant features for the site include all exterior elevations, including roofs, of the main Museum of Science and Industry building and two pavilions. The elliptical portion of Jackson Park, including the museum site and adjoining parkland, the North Pond, the Darrow Bridge and its abutments, and the two remaining vintage 1893 lampposts. In the 1990s, a renovation was completed on the site, including the addition of a new underground parking garage beneath the elliptical green in front of the museum. The modifications were reviewed by the commission in 1995 and construction completed in 1998. The existing parking garage entrance is located on the northwest side of the museum campus, highlighted in yellow. Currently, there is an existing precast concrete panel sign above the entrance ramp that states, "Welcome to the Museum of Science and Industry." The museum is renaming the building to the Kenneth C. Griffin Museum of Science and Industry and is proposing to install a new sign in the same location. The new sign will match the existing almost entirely in terms of size, location, and materials. And staff recommends approval as proposed with the condition that the finish of the new sign match the existing garage. I'm here if you have any questions. So is representatives from the museum and their architect.
Thank you, Emily. Any questions, commissioners, for Emily before we hear from the applicant? Commissioner Hughes.
Pretty straightforward presentation. My question was about the describing of the letters. Is it going to be the same process as the previous signage?
That's my understanding, but I think the architect can answer that if you'd like. Oh.
Let's hear from the project architect. Good afternoon.
Hi, my name is Henry Zimlak. I'm with HPZS, and I didn't quite hear the question.
Oh, I'm sorry. Thank you, Henry. I was asking about the relief of the new letters. Is it going to be the same process as the existing letters?
So the existing letters are actually an applique.
Oh,
And that's why we originally were planning a panel that would actually be put in front of the applique, but that wasn't going to work, so we decided to replace the entire precast concrete. And at that point, it just made more sense to have the letters cast in.
okay.
But
Yeah,
for
that's
permanent.
great. Yeah, it is. Yeah. No, that's great. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you very much. Would you like to make any other statements about the project or in general?
We've made every effort to try and be as consistent with the existing building as we possibly could.
No, it's very clear. I think that you guys did a great job matching kind of the existing. Wow.
Great. Thank you very much. Commissioners, any other questions? Seeing none, I don't believe there's any comment cards for this item. And there being none, like to call on any final discussion from our commissioners. And if there are none, I'd like to request a motion to adopt the staff recommendation for the project. Do we have a motion? So moved, Commissioner Ponce. We have a second? Commissioner Farris seconded, and Commissioner Hughes. Yes, and I'm a yes, and the motion carries unanimously. Thank you very much. Good luck with the project. All right, our second project and our last project on the agenda is 1734 North Wells in the 43rd Ward, Alderman Knudsen, Old Town Triangle District. Proposed modifications to existing rooftop decks constructed without a permit in the 1980s, including replacement of railings. And Emily Barton has the staff report.
Thank you. So the subject property is located mid-block on Wells Street in the Old Town Triangle District. Originally built in the 1880s, the building at 1734 North Wells is best known for its 1920s and 1930s remodeling and additions by Sol Kogan and Edgar Miller. While included in the Old Town Triangle District, the building also meets criteria for individual designation. The building is currently a condominium with 7 units. The building has 3 roof decks, 2 of which are visible from Wells Street. Per the applicant, these decks were installed sometime in the 1980s without a permit. The Old Town Triangle District was designated in 1977, and no records could be located indicating any review by the commission. The commission's current guidelines for alterations specifically state that additions will be allowed only if they do not alter, change, obscure, damage, or destroy any significant features of the landmark or district. However, it is important to note that these guidelines were not adopted by the commission until 1992. There are pending building violations on the deck, and the property has an active building court case. The violation citations were issued in 2021, including no plans or permits on record for their construction, guardrails under the 42-inch mandatory height, rotted decking, and baluster openings more than 4 inches apart. The applicant has been working with the Department of Buildings to make them code compliant, including pursuing the alternative code approval request process, and was approved to use roof hatches for access rather than a doghouse and full access stair. The applicant is now requesting review of the decks with minor modifications by the Permit Review Committee. In the submission to commission staff, the applicant provided a written statement regarding the proposed work, clarifying that the work includes only the replacement of railings, the relocation of some railings to minimize visibility, and the removal of the existing decking between the existing railing locations and the new proposed locations. Staff is uncertain if this will address the rotted decking mentioned in the violations from Department of Buildings. The extant eastern roof deck takes up most of the roof footprint, approximately 22 feet by 20 foot 3 inches in area. The steel railings, which are currently modified with additional wood members, do not meet code requirements. The eastern parapet of this deck rises approximately 1 foot above the deck level, leaving the remaining 2 foot 6 inch height of the railing above the parapet highly visible from the street. Staff recommends that the existing decks do not meet the commission's guidelines and standards, as they have a significant impact on the building's roof line and are highly visible. All photos have been taken from the public rights of way that you see. When meeting with the applicant, they were informed by staff that as constructed, the decks would not meet the commission's guidelines, and staff suggested implementing setbacks and railing modifications to help minimize visibility for the committee's consideration. After multiple discussions, the applicants are now proposing setbacks and railing modifications that would reduce the deck visibility from the existing conditions. A 2-foot setback from the inner face of the east parapet is proposed, with an additional 1-foot 6-inch setback from the existing locations of the north and south railings, which is approximately 2 feet in total from the inner face of the north parapet and 1 foot 6 inches from the inner face of the south parapet. The area of existing decking between the old railings and the new is proposed to be removed, with the exception of an area that is tied structurally to the parapet. The railing material was also revised to be a simple open metal railing, matching other steel elements on the building, such as the windows and light fixtures. Visibility studies from a pedestrian perspective were requested, but were never provided to staff. The existing northern roof deck is rectangular in shape, approximately 16 feet 10 inches by 16 feet 4 inches. And because of the slope of the roof underneath, it exists at 2 heights. The higher level is approximately 1 foot taller, and the 2 decks are connected by a stair. Because of the change in grade, the railings rise above the existing parapet 1 foot 7 inches at the lower portion and approximately 2 foot 9 inches at the higher portion. Because of the change in grade, the railings rise above the existing parapet 1 foot 7 inches to 2 foot 9 inches, depending on the height. The current submittal reduces the deck area, implementing a setback of 6 feet from the outer face of the parapet for the east railing and a 1 foot 6 inch setback for the north railing. Similar to the east deck, the applicant is proposing to replace the railings only per code requirements, with the area of existing decking between the old railings and the new to be removed. All other elements, including deck structure and decking, are proposed to remain. The replacement railings are proposed to be open metal to match those on the east deck. As the north parapet does not rise any higher than the deck, these will still be visible, but less than the existing. Again, visibility studies were requested but not provided. Because of this, staff created a rough estimation 3D model exhibits in order to help us evaluate the visibility of the proposal. And based on this study, staff believes the railings will still be visible from the public way. Here you can see the existing conditions versus the proposed modifications taken from the corner of Wells and St. Paul Avenue. Here is existing versus proposed from just south of the building looking north. And here is existing versus proposed from about a half block north of the building looking south. While an improvement over the existing situation, the proposed modifications will still result in visible deck railings and do not meet the Commission's guidelines and standards, and staff recommends the following. The committee advised the applicant that the decks, including with the proposed modifications, are visible from the public rights of way, do not meet the criteria set forth in the Commission's rules and regulations, the Commission's guidelines for alterations to historic buildings and new construction, and Standards 9 and 10 of the U.S. Secretary of the Interior's Standards for Rehabilitation of Historic Buildings, and therefore would have an adverse effect on the significant historical and architectural features of the landmark building and the district and should be eliminated. Staff further recommends that the committee advise the applicant that should the historic preservation staff receive a permit application for the project as currently proposed, staff shall issue a preliminary disapproval of the application. A preliminary disapproval would trigger an informal conference, and if the informal conference does not reach an accord, a public hearing on the permit application would be scheduled in accordance with the provisions of the Chicago Landmarks Ordinance. Letters of opposition from Alderman Knutson, the Old Town Triangle Association, the Edgar Miller Legacy Foundation, and another owner in the building were included in your packet. I'm here if you have any questions, as is the owner and architect.
All right. Well, thank you very much, Emily. Commissioners, would you like to hear from the applicant or have any questions for Emily first? Okay, let's hear from the applicant. Thank you, Emily.
I'm Dr. Glenn Aldinger, and I am the majority owner of the units at 1734 North Wells and also the president of the condominium association. Just wanted to give a little background. I moved into this building as a renter in 1974 and have lived there ever since. It was turned into a condominium by the owner at that time, Lucy Montgomery. Interesting woman, to say the least, a big supporter of the Black Panthers. And frankly, that was kind of the basis for her unit to support that organization. When she finally died, she was eulogized at Operation Push headquarters by two of the Panthers who were still alive and said, had they not been at Lucy, one or the other, in college, under her direction and her support, they might well not have survived. So the place is magical. When I walked in as a renter, starting my residency at University of Chicago, and looked around, the place is magical. I mean, carved ceilings, painted, stained glass everywhere. And we would learn a little bit more about Edgar and then found he was still alive. He was in San Francisco. And a group of us brought him back. He was not in doing well in San Francisco. And he was excited to be back in Chicago where he had done so much work. Frankly, we put him in one of the units that he had created as an artist studio. We supported him. We built him an area for him to work where he could carve and sculpt, paint. This guy was a true Renaissance artist. And he sat down with me for breakfast the day after we brought him back. He said, you know, Glenn, with what you've done for me here, I think I might just live a little longer. And he did. He lived 10 more years as we put on exhibits of his works and spent a lot of time with him. My then wife, who's now deceased, was not working, so she was with him all the time and basically was able to show him some of the things that we had done both inside and outside to the complex, which he approved of. One interesting point was when I caught him painting his portrait over that had been done when he was very young, I said, Edgar, what are you doing? And he said, my art is alive. My art, my architecture is not static. This is not how I look. I want to have this portrait look like I look. He was character and he was a lot of fun to be around. In fact, when he died, he willed 525 pieces of art to my wife, who had spent so much time with him, so that we could donate it to places where he was comfortable, places that would show his work. So when he saw the deck on Unit 1 and the glass staircase that leads up to that deck, he was excited and impressed because he had used glass blocks to an outdoor staircase and a walkway that lasted maybe 2 or 3 years, of course. But we were able to honor his art by putting a glass threaded staircase in Unit 1. He actually saw that deck and appreciated. And then when we found ourselves not in total compliance with the city, even though these decks were done, as was mentioned by Emily, in the early 80s by owners of those units, the city and we have been meeting and we've been doing everything the city said to make it compliant with city responsibilities. However, that doesn't address the visual aspect. I wanted to make sure that the commission was reminded of the landmark designation of West Burton Place, primarily done because of the Edgar Miller complex on that Burton, which, by the way, has roof decks. Roof decks, two that were originally done by Edgar and Saul. And then when Mark Mamlin, who owned the building, saw the roof deck that we had completed on one, which he had been a renter years before, he promptly went to that building, which he owned, and put on two new roof decks. That may not have been known when the commission approved it. I know that a lot of us supported this designation, this landmark designation. It's a district designation. Frankly, we would be willing to have our building individually landmarked once we get rid of all the issues regarding, for example, the roof decks. There's probably some questions. We basically have asked Emily, the staff, tell us what we need to do rather than remove the roof decks. The middle roof deck has never been a problem, has never been in and out of compliance, and it is virtually not seen by any street person. The two front decks are the ones that could be seen by Wells Street people. And we asked them, we said, what can we do? And I thought we had an agreement that if we pulled it back a certain distance, it would be virtually inapparent from the street, certainly approved by Edgar when he was alive. And yet now I'm hearing that there's still some view. By the way, I tried to contact the alderman's office and was told by a staff member he wasn't interested. And Wells Street's, I mean, I've been a member of the Old Town Triangle Association for 50 years now, exactly. And I tried to reach out to them and was kind of stonewalled in any considerations, support or non-support, even though I've been supported in that organization for a long time. So we would like to be just told what's satisfactory for you all. And we're willing to change the decks so that they're really not visible. Apparently, what you've got so far, there's still a small area of visibility. It sounds to me like we could move it a bit further and accomplish that.
Okay.
And we were looking for the staff to tell us that.
All right. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. And I would just want to see if commissioners have any specific poignant questions they'd like to ask. Commissioner Hughes.
Thank you for the explanation and the story about your friend that you guys brought back. But I do want to kind of focus on the issues at hand here about how the process works with working with the staff. It really involves you guys as the architects, the creators, the owners of the properties, bringing the solutions to them and then them providing feedback. They are not supposed to give you the design for you to do for your property. So I'm sure, Emily, and please correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you guys did request them to come with another solution once you discovered that it is still visible with what's been presented today. Is that correct?
After, this has been,
1 year.
yeah, this has been going for quite a while. This
Okay.
has been targeting meetings and then keeps getting, pushed. And so, we made it clear in, I believe, January of this year that, we would not be recommending approval of the decks, and we had made some suggested modifications to minimize visibility, but, we didn't know what would be visible and what would not be visible. So we just gave kind of our best recommendations. And then, when we saw those, we found they are still visible. That's kind of how we got here.
So I'm the architect and a former occupant of Edgar Miller. Bordered on, I lived in Mease, then I lived in Edgar Miller and Mease again. So very fortunate in the Chicago area to benefit and live in those types of structures.
What was your name?
When
Sir,
Glenn,
what was your name?
Edward Peck, Edward Peck Design is the firm. When Glenn came to me with some code violations that were received for these, we immediately made revisions to the deck to ensure that they were safe. We added wood components. We knew those were not final, but we did this for safety reasons, and we immediately did that. And then we went through a process, as Emily mentioned, with the ACAR submission in the building department to get everything up to code approval. We didn't have the proper sort of access to it because it was done with roof hatches and not penthouse parapets. Now, the penthouse parapets would have been completely visible and completely ruled out by landmarks. So we worked with the building department quite extensively to get them to approve our strategy, and we revised the hatches and the staircases leading up to those elements. So we got to that approval point, and then we had to go through landmarks. So initially, we made the submissions. So to correct on the process, we did put forth a design revision to them. They were critiqued. We put forth another one. We had recommendations at one stage that if we changed all of the railings to glass, which was against my belief of what they should be, because the steel was really a major component in Edgar Miller's work, is the steel railings and everything
One
that you
question, one
find.
clarification though. There was requests for 3D vantage points that were not provided, right?
I do not understand. We provided street sections quite, at every stage. To me, as an architect, looking at the cross-section of a street, the public viewpoints, I don't recall, and I apologize I apologize, Emily. I'm not saying that you did not.
Because normally we see renditions that are prepared by the applicant, not by the
Yes.
staff. And I don't think we got that opportunity here, which is,
We-
I think,
we
doesn't help
would've-
your case.
Okay. I don't remember specifically being requested to do that. We did do those cross sections. We moved the railings back in accordance to those cross sections from the street
Right, I understand.
vantage points.
Deanna, did you have something to say?
Yes, Commissioner, I'd just like to add a little bit of clarification. So obviously Emily has been working on this for a bit and, we did discuss this and try to provide as much guidance as possible. So the cross sections that the architect is referencing are the sight lines that you take from a pedestrian perspective and you just draw a straight line. As you know from our presentations over the years, they are only so good in illustrating the visibility because that is just that one vantage point. So as a typical standard process, not in any way different than we would approach any other project, we either have mock-ups that are physical on the site, so staff can walk around the district, walk the streets, and take photographs to illustrate the visibility, or we ask for perspective views from certain vantage points. And Emily, you can correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that Emily has provided specific vantage points mapped on a street grid to take the visibility studies from there and do perspective images.
Okay, so that's we failed to provide that. I'm sorry. We did the sightline studies. We also did mock-ups at a previous stage when we were considering the glass as a replacement to minimize the view. So we did mock-ups at that point, and then photographs of that. Emily came out at that stage. We did not do the mock-up.
Okay.
Oh, I thought you came out. I'm sorry. And I'm not here to disagree with the staff. We are willing to back up and actually do those 3D renderings. I'm sorry that we did not provide them for today, but we feel that the sight lines that we have provided move these railings back beyond the pedestrian way.
Okay.
So we can provide a further evidence of that.
Okay, thank you. Commissioners, any other questions?
Yeah, I got a couple, and I'm just kind of wrapping my head around the whole situation as a whole, because there's the deck itself,
Mhm.
then there's the original railings that were not code compliant, and, it sounds like from what you explained, there's the work you're doing with the, departments of buildings and whatnot to go through that review to be approved at that base level.
Yep.
And are you confirming that that has now?
That has been approved. The
Received his
ACAR
approval.
has been approved, yes.
Okay, so at least there's some ground play. I don't, based on the lack of, the renderings, and I agree, the site sections just aren't sufficient. I mean, being on the street and seeing this in perspective is, where you would pick this up, and we see hints of that from what the staff put together just with the SketchUp model. So I don't think the burden of us being able to understand that has really been met, and, I don't think we have enough to be able to decide on that from that perspective. But it sounds like the owner is open to further stepping back the deck as necessary
Yes.
to achieve that. That's
Yes.
okay. Yeah, yeah. Go ahead.
Deanna, did you have something else?
Yes, sorry, can I just add on to that? So it sounds like, and Ponce, please chime in. It sounds like we are not at a place today where we can make a decision. We are in a position right now where we would approve the staff's recommendations of needing more information to actually approve the design and to move forward. Right now, there's not enough information for us to make a sufficient decision. The information that has been provided by the staff is sufficient enough for us to all determine and say that it's still visible. And according to the guidelines, it should not be. So I'm going to agree with Commissioner Fair on this, and of course, agree with the staff's recommendations on this as well.
Yeah, of course, and I agree. But it sounds that you are aware of the process and the next steps and to follow staff's recommendations to get to an agreement and to get to the place where we meet these guidelines. We have full confidence in the staff. We've reviewed many of these. And so when they are presented before us, we expect the same.
Commissioners, if I might make a suggestion, I believe that currently this is a pre-permit review. So I think it is a valid point that if there is an application that we receive, we do need to act within 15 days in our landmarks ordinance. So your pre-permit decision today would still be important, with the maybe an additional that staff would work with reviewing a mock-up of a revised proposal that we can come back to. Either if we determine that it's not visible at all, staff is authorized to approve, or if there is something else that we need to come back with to your, to the next meeting or any meeting after that when it's available, that is something that we can do. But I would recommend that it actually be a mock-up, not prospective views at this point.
Thank you. So with that, it would be basically approving adopting the staff recommendation with disapproving what's proposed today, but then allowing for a mock-up to happen. And once that's reviewed by staff, that would be presented back to the commission at a later date. Okay. Commissioner Fair?
Yeah, I was just gonna say, the understood goal here is, any visibility to that railing is, gonna have an adverse effect on the property. So the goal is, eliminate the sight lines entirely to that railing to, have it disappear more or less. So, and I'm just, more so stating the obvious out loud for probably my own confirmation, but, I think I'm in alignment with, proceeding with, having that mock-up made. And in alignment with, you know, some of the timeline that you identified, Deanna, does that then allow staff to make, you know, the decision, or would that come back for our review after that?
Commissioners, we can, I would suggest that maybe we do coordinate with one of you. So if there is no need to come back to a full meeting, we can achieve that. If it's, you know, just to illustrate that it's not visible and that we have looked at sufficient information to satisfy, you know, the conditions. I cannot say that if there is anything that is a better situation than what is currently, what we anticipate is the visibility, not 100%
Right.
eliminating visibility, I would say that would come back to the committee.
That seems reasonable, but because I do think that there will be some, seems like there will be some visibility, minimal visibility, you know, when they do the mock-up. I'd be curious to see that. So if there is some at staff level, when you review it, it would come back to us. Would not, you could make the determination. Okay.
Yes, we'll perform the mock-up and have that scheduled.
Great.
Excellent.
Okay,
Thank you.
so I motion us to accept this.
We still have public comment.
Oh, I'm
Thank you so much. We appreciate your testimony. And I think that we do move to the public comment portion of this. And we have a few comments that have been submitted. Mr. Ward Miller. You still here?
Good afternoon. Once again, Commissioners. Ward Miller, the Richard H. Treehouse Executive Director of Preservation Chicago. We're not here to talk about the rooftop decks today. We want to encourage, as you heard in some of the comments, that this incredible complex of buildings, which includes the Glassner Studios, be considered as a sole designated landmark. Right now, all these buildings are part of the Old Town Triangle Historic District. We think that these are important structures. They're works of art and architecture, has an amazing history tied to the Black Panthers and Lucy Montgomery and some of our elected officials that have now retired. And we think this is an important idea to consider, to give an individual landmark designation to these buildings, recognizing their history, their artful qualities, their architecture, and the history of Saul Kagan and Edgar Miller, in addition to Lucy Montgomery and the Black Panther history. This is very similar to the West Burton Street Landmark District that we all worked to make a landmark district about 5 years ago. It'd be wonderful to include this. These buildings are just at that edge of the period of significance. And so it would really be important to recognize these as great works of art and part of that cultural and historical significance to the built environment in Chicago. So as part of these discussions, again, not getting involved in the rooftop decks, but thought this is an opportunity and the comments that were made here to encourage really good things to come forward. And I think a landmark designation of these buildings would be well welcomed by many of us in the architecture and preservation community. I think even in the Old Town community, and hopefully with ownership. These are outstanding works of art. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Miller. We have one additional comment card from Zach Bleacher, and I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that. Zach, there you go. Thank you.
Hi, how are you doing today? Thank you for hearing from us, the public. My name is Zach Bleicher. I'm also a resident of the property at 1734 North Wells. And I'm in support of the preservation of the architectural and historic character of the significant Edgar Miller design building. And as I've sent letters previously to the commission and the committee, I'm not in support of the recent permit application. However, I am in support of individually landmarking this building, as several people have mentioned today is important to do. It sounds like the staff recommendation is going to be followed here, and so also would support the staff's recommendation to take a harder look at these roof decks. Just to point out that they were built without permits in the 1980s and 90s, at a time when I understand that that was still the controlling law of the city of Chicago. And it does have a very fascinating history that does not seem to be relevant to this particular proceeding. But I do encourage everyone to look into the history of this building. It's incredible and should probably end up becoming a national landmark because of its national significance to this country. We could all honor Edgar Miller's memory by supporting landmarking for this building. I also just wanted to respond to something I heard, that there are roof decks at another Edgar Miller building at 155 West Burton Place. I do not believe that those roof decks are visible from the public way. And I believe that images have been sent to the commission of that building and of several other Edgar Miller designed buildings where the roof decks are not visible from the public way. So in conclusion, the roof decks are inconsistent with the historic preservation guidelines as described by city staff. And there was no chance to actually go through the process originally because the permits were not applied for at the time. And they would have likely been opposed had they been requested at the time by the neighbors and perhaps by the city. So thank you for your consideration, and I look forward to seeing how this proceeds.
Thank you very much. There being no more public comments, this concludes the public comment period. And I'd like to call on final discussion from the commission. There was a motion floated out there. Commissioners, any points of discussion? Is there a motion to adopt the staff recommendation with the addition of review of a mock-up on site to show if there will be any visibility of these railings? And if there is any visibility, then it comes back to the permit review committee. Commissioner Fair has made a motion. Do we have a second? Second, Commissioner Hughes. Commissioner Ponce? Is yes? I'm a yes. Great, thank you. Thank you. This motion carries unanimously. And we will look forward to the mock-ups. Thank you. And that is our last item on the agenda for today. This moves us to the adjournment period. Do we have a motion to adjourn? Commissioner Hughes, so moved. Second, Commissioner Ponce. All those in favor? Aye. Thank you all very much. This concludes our meeting today.